All right, welcome back to TCI headquarters. We are here to talk about another victory, a little bit different than last week. Last week we were in here going, "Oh my gosh, what happened in Louisville?" And
JP only shows up after wins.
yeah, that's what it is, JP. You're gonna have to start doing these every week. That's exactly it. Let's see, you weren't here the week we did Georgia, right?
Nope.
You weren't here the week we did Louisville. We done figured it out. Sorry, Dabo team. We'll make sure JP's here from now on.
Especially the South Carolina game.
Especially after the Chickens. Big game, obviously looking bigger and bigger. But let's start off, Dabo talked about some of the injuries today. We obviously had some new ones with Tristan going down, freshman coming in, playing outstanding. We've written a lot about that and talked about that. You want to update the injury statuses that Dabo confirmed today?
Yeah, so K Park will not play this Saturday. No real surprise there. I think we all kind of expected that. Tristan Lee is day-to-day. Shocker there. Marcus Tate is day-to-day. Dabo again said that they found out Saturday morning, the day of the game, that he wasn't going to be able to play. So they went with Sewell, who wears the new number 73 now. I think that's why he had to change his number in case they went goal line package, because you got to put Peyton Page in there. And then let's see, and then who else? We got Tyler Brown. Dabo says probably going to redshirt him now. That looked like, which is not surprising if you've read what we've been talking about and everything. Not surprised there. And then who am I forgetting? There's somebody else.
Peter Woods.
How could I forget about Peter Woods? He's day-to-day.
I'm 11.
Now, remember, Dabo said later in the week, last Wednesday, that Peter Woods had basically got hit in the head in the Louisville game. So it's probably a concussion. So we'll see if he's ready to play. It depends on those concussions, on where they hit and the severity, if they still have headaches throughout the week.
Well, the good news is, Dabo's answer last night was a little different on Woods.
What was it?
Last night he said he expected him to play.
Okay, there we go.
So yesterday he expected to play. Today, day-to-day. Some of that's just
maybe he had a headache.
The gamesmanship. I think it's just because he was talking to the media today versus the Don last night. But I think we'll see Peter back there. Tyler Brown. Then remember, he can play postseason. Of course, postseason for Clemson may be the Pop-Tart Bowl, but hopefully it's not. Hopefully if they can find a way into the ACC, postseason a lot more meaningful.
Go Syracuse, go Wake
Forest. Be good to have him back in there.
Who's pulling for Wake Forest now next week? Well, I'm a big Wake Forest fan.
I pull for Wake Forest every week.
Yeah, I know you're from that area.
You should. You love
always
the Krispy
like to
Kreme
see
donuts.
Wake Forest win.
Yeah. I am pulling for Wake Forest, and then if not, then I'm pulling for Syracuse. So,
Yep. And we're also pulling for Virginia.
Pulling for Virginia and pulling
go
against
Tony
Louisville.
Elliott. Let's go.
Need Virginia to beat SMU and Louisville to finish below the
crazy
men's
is this,
standings.
guys? Remember a few weeks ago we were in Tallahassee. I think that's where it was, and we were watching, or it might have been somewhere else. But we were watching the Louisville-Virginia game, and Virginia led the whole game. And then at the end, Louisville scores a touchdown with like 30 seconds to go. So
I had forgotten that.
They win 24-20. At the time, we didn't think anything of it. But how big is that game now?
Right.
If Virginia could have hung on and won.
Right now is the difference in the standings.
Correct.
That's
one
amazing.
game.
I hadn't even thought about
Yeah.
that. Well, Tony did a great job this past week. Went to Pitt and won.
Yep.
Now we'll see. Obviously, hopefully Clemson can do the same thing. JP, what's some of the stuff you heard from Dabo today? Stood out to you?
I took note of what he talked about with the defense. I thought that was the best defensive performance we've seen all season long. They went with the 4-3 base. Sammy got his first start, and I thought it made a world of difference, especially with Peter Woods still out, although I thought Jaheim Lawson was pretty dang good
I think
Saturday.
he had his best game.
Best game. The run defense was just night and day different than what we saw against Louisville, and I'm interested to see what they do Saturday against Pitt. A little bit different of offense as opposed to Virginia Tech, but none of those coaches are going to tip their hand on what they're going to do Saturday. But some of the things he said about the defense, and especially when you compare him to the way he was talking about them this time last week. We got too much talent to be this bad on defense. But outside the injuries, that was probably the biggest thing for me.
Well, Will, you wrote on what he said about would Sammy start and all of that. He talked about that a little bit on the radio last night as well. First, talk about what Dabo said, and then we'll talk about what might be different.
Yeah, so Dabo said that it's going to be based on the personnel. So understand that Pittsburgh plays a lot of 11 personnel, which means one running back, one tight end. Where last week Virginia Tech plays a lot of 12 personnel. which is one running back, two tight ends. So in a 12 personnel, 4-3 is a better scheme. So you have your middle linebacker out there, or you can have all three of your linebackers out there. Depends on who's who. At this point in his career, they don't feel as comfortable with Sammy out there in those nickel defenses as much when they have to play a team who uses a lot of 11 personnel, which is what Pitt does. So Dabo's basically saying it's going to be situational, whether he starts or not. Depends on what Pitt does. Now, I have a theory. Robert, me and you talked about it before this video. That could be totally different.
Could be a little gamesmanship from
Gamesmanship with Dabo, because I think with Wade Woodaz, you can actually play that 4-2, if you will, and you make Wade Woodaz your nickelback / safety, or you could put Wade Woodaz as a safety and bring Khalil Barnes down as your nickel. So there's a couple things you can do with Woodaz that allows you to play that scheme that you still have. That way you can keep Sammy Brown on the field, because Dabo said Sammy still will get on the field because he deserves the opportunity to be on the field. In other words, that's Dabo telling Wes Goodwin, hey, make sure number 47 is on the field.
Number 47's got what, 4 sacks on the season? I think the team's got like
second on the team
17.
Yeah.
All right.
18.
He had
18.
the only sack Saturday. He had a half of the tackles for Lawson. He led the team in tackles. You got to have that guy on the field.
Yeah. And by the way, there was one other sack, but Virginia Tech didn't give it to it. They said it was a run. And that's when T.J. Parker sacked their quarterback and stripped the fumble. But they called it a run play instead of a sack, which is just bullcrap. That was clearly a sack. But it is what it is,
All right, you guys had some players today. What were the highlights from the players?
Okay, can I say this real fast?
You can say whatever you want.
There's a new Mackenzie Alexander at Clemson, and it's Ashton Hampton.
Good.
He's got that kind of cockiness to him. But he's also very good in front of the microphone, in front of the media. Says what's on his mind. He was asked today, like, did you think you could make that kind of play? He's like, yeah, I can make that play. I'm not good. He's just got that cockiness to him, not in a bad way, but in a good way. And it was refreshing to see that, because that's the kind of player you want on the field playing on game days.
Mackenzie Alexander, you're saying being frank and telling the truth. Mm-hmm. He did that when he was a player here. During the recruiting process, not so much. Not so much. He was famous for basically just totally saying stuff that wasn't factual. But let's talk about Hampton.
Yeah.
He's played a lot this season, playing more. I don't think he played at all against Louisville.
That was the only game he's not played a defensive
We were looking at that coming back, but he's getting better and better. Obviously, young man is confident. He's just different. Physically, he's different than the other corners
6'2", 200
we've
pounds.
got, and really than we've had.
Mm-hmm.
That catch was electric. So, JP, you and I talked about it on the drive back. Lucas, what's your status?
That's somebody nobody asked about either.
What's your status? Well, regardless of whether you're injured or not.
Yeah.
How much are we going to see 23 on the field versus 10 on the field?
I think you're going to start seeing 23 on the field a lot more. You talked about the 6'2", and he's even longer than that. That guy's so long. And what really stood out about that interception was he had just got burned right before that. Mm-hmm. Able to put it in the windshield, come right back and make that play. That guy's going to be a staple on the back end of that defense for the next couple of years. Same thing with, like we said about Sammy. You got to have that guy on the field, And Lucas has kind of been up and down, and the shoulder's still bothering him. You can see it sometimes when he's out there. That's the guy you got to have on the field. He's a playmaker.
Yeah, he is. Now, here's the thing: why you would like to have Lucas on the field is Lucas can tackle better in open space. That's something Ashton's still working on and getting better at. Where Lucas,
he told you today he can do everything. Will,
come
on.
Well, he can, and he's an outstanding player. I think he probably starts this week because I don't know where Lucas is health-wise. But Lucas is the reason I think you keep the 3-man rotation there. And Dabo talked about that today, where it was like, he took out, Avion too. Mm-hmm. And so at one point you had him and Lucas out there on the field. And so Dabo says that, basically they're going to keep rotating all 3 of those guys. But what I like about Lucas is his physicality. Lucas goes up there and he's really good in the open field. I mean, he tackles probably as good as anybody in that defense. And so you got to have him out there for that reason, especially the way if you're going to play a lot of press corner. Because people like to do those quick stuff, especially against Clemson's defensive front. a lot of people don't say this because people are down on Clemson, but a lot of it is because teams are getting the ball out fast. I mean, very rarely do you get to. You saw against Virginia Tech, Dabo says we could have had 6 sacks because it's true. Because they were back there harassing him the whole game. And they were getting after him because Virginia Tech holds the ball a little bit longer than other teams do. Louisville, you go watch Louisville, when they did throw it, it was like one step, throw, get it out, and put the ball in the hands. You know, you're going to see Pittsburgh do that this week. It's going to be one step, throw, get the ball out quick. So you've got to have corners that can come up and tackle, and that's really important. And that's why Jaden Lucas is important.
That is very important. You also need defensive ends that can cause that pressure, even
Correct.
though they're trying to throw the ball quick.
Correct.
Because they used to do that against the studs we had out there.
Yeah.
And I consider Parker a stud, but other
Well,
side,
he's getting double teamed.
other side, not so. And that's part of it.
And that's why I think
The
it was
other
big.
side, not so
What
much.
JP said earlier, I think was big, was that you saw, Lawson take another step this week where he looked better getting after the quarterback and also setting the edge on the run.
Yep.
And that's what he needs to keep doing.
Yeah, he was disruptive. He didn't get the stats to show it, but he was in the backfield. You talked about the 3-corner rotation. JP, we also talked about this riding back as well. You look at that position going into next season, assuming everybody comes back, which we expect, in good shape. They just lost a big-time corner commit. Not going to impact your next season.
No, I don't.
With
think,
those 3.
I don't think it really does. And then people forget that Corey and Gibson's still on that roster. That's a guy that was very highly rated. He was hurt earlier in the year. They haven't needed him. They're going to redshirt him this year. So you add him into the rotation. That gives you 4 really good guys. And he was like, at one time, if I'm remembering right, he was like fringe 5-star. Lucas was a former 5-star. If he ever puts it all together, man, that secondary is going to be lights out.
And you get Sheldon Lewis back too, who's going to, when he comes back off injury, probably back for the bowl game more than likely. So that's big too. You add that into the rotation. He's another good tackler that you like at that nickel position. So yeah, I think the future looks good.
With Mike Reed there, you're going to be in good shape.
Right.
And
There's
also,
the key.
also don't want
Right.
to forget Tavoy Fegan, who was really,
Yeah.
who looks like he's a really good
He was getting
prospect
ready
too.
to email JP, wasn't he? Don't forget me.
They used to call that guy the seatbelt in high school, because he was so good in coverage.
There we go.
I like that. That's a good nickname.
The
Seatbelt.
seatbelt.
I like it.
So there's a little bit. Anything else you guys want to hit on from the interviews?
Yeah, I want to talk about the freshman offensive lineman.
Thurman?
Elijah Thurman.
Elijah Thurman. Dude, first of all, very good speaker. Really enjoyed listening to him today. But another guy with a lot of confidence, and he was asked, several of the guys asked him, like, so you came in and you got no preparation and you got to go against the number 1 sack leader in the country. What did you feel about that? He says, I didn't even think about it, to be honest with you. He's just like, I know I got to do
He's
my
like,
job.
oh crap, I gotta go in the game.
Yeah, he's like, I got to do my job and I got to do this. And he says, I just thought about my job and what I needed to do and what Coach coached me to do. And he said that him and Sewell worked well together along each other, where they were helping each other out as far as what they did in practice. And he mentioned a couple of things that they saw that Virginia Tech was doing. He remembered it from practice and, this is what we were doing here. And they kind of talked to each other, which was good to do. That's what you're supposed to do when you're alongside somebody. So I was really impressed with him and what he said. And, I think Clemson's okay if they got to go with him for a few more weeks. I think he'll be fine because that was a really, really good defensive end he went against. And he held his own for the most part. And Dabo said today, all 4 sacks were on Cade Klubnik.
Yeah.
They were not on anybody in the offensive line. He said Cade has to get rid of the football faster. That has to make better decisions.
You think Matt Luke's like reminding Dabo to say that every week?
I think he is.
Because he says that every game.
There was a picture that Bart took after that game with Matt Luke and Elijah Thurman, where Matt Luke just, I guess, went up to him and hugged him. I thought that thing spoke volumes. You see Tristan Lee go down and you see Thurman coming in, you're like, oh crap.
And you're already out, Marcus Tate,
Yeah.
who's your other backup left tackle.
Well, another coach that's doing a hell of a job,
Yeah.
right? Difference in the offensive line.
Absolutely.
Probably one of the biggest hires Dabo's made to this point.
It's up there with Brent Venables. It really is, in my mind.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. That's saying something, isn't it?
it's saying something.
You listen to Pat Narduzzi talk during his presser yesterday, and he was awfully complimentary of Clemson's offensive line, talking about it's going to be the most physical they've seen this season. I mean, he's just had such an impact on that group, and quickly.
When was the last time you heard a coach talk about Clemson's physicality in the offensive line?
I can't even remember.
I can't remember one either. Maybe Danny Ford years?
It's been a hot minute.
Let's continue our look ahead. Marcus Tate gone. Every other offensive lineman, according to Dabo, back.
Yep.
Sadler going to redshirt.
Yep.
Going to have an extra year, which
He's
is great for the
he's really
future.
good, yeah.
Thurman coming on for the future. Sewell playing more and playing well.
Yep.
Future of that offensive line.
Got Lip to come back another year.
And he has
looks
been
very
really good at center.
Yep.
I mean, do you got anybody ever mentioned center position?
Well,
in
and that
Clemson?
fumble he jumped on was
Oh,
huge.
how huge was that?
Yep.
I mean, that would have changed the whole
Well,
game.
that
what
and
happened on the next play?
That and the Heisman play from Cade. A lot of people pointed out he was too far downfield. When he scrambled, he came
He had to
back
come back.
Oh,
so
I
that they
didn't even
didn't get a
notice that.
penalty.
To
Was
keep it
smart
from being a
enough to
penalty.
come back so they wouldn't have a penalty on that play. How many centers, offensive linemen, period,
Do
would
that.
think to do that?
None of them at Miami. Sorry, I had to, because they were always going upfield.
That was-
and they should not have won one game because of that. But anyway, I digress.
You digress. Anything else you want to add?
I think that's it. I think we
That's
covered
it.
all the bases of that.
All right, we gave y'all previews. We talked about the big win, combined a lot of stuff. Much different than last week where we just had a lot to complain about. So stay tuned to Clemson Insider. We'll all be up in Pittsburgh. Believe it or not, Steeler Will's going to Pittsburgh. I know that's hard for y'all to
And
believe.
what will I be doing
And
on
what
Sunday?
else do we got? We need to call out JP. We got on him a little bit last week.
Really?
We call,
He's not wearing.
we
any
don't have Steeler
clothing.
garb all over. We saw it all weekend.
Yes.
But
Don't unbutton the shirt. He might
Yeah, don't
reveal
unbutton-
something.
Well, we don't want to
It's-
do that
it's
anyway.
Batman.
We don't need to do that anyway.
It's my other passion.
But that's good, Will. That's great.
Well, here's why. And somebody asked me today about that. Like, I thought you would be wearing something Pittsburgh today. Clemson's playing Pitt. I just think that's not what you should do the week you're playing Pittsburgh.
Okay.
You know, so I won't wear any Steelers stuff during Clemson.
So for all you fans out there, we're gonna let you know like Friday night,
No.
Saturday,
Around
whether
the
he's
team,
wearing
Friday
Steeler
night,
stuff
I will
because
be
I
wearing
can guarantee you he will be.
I'll be wearing Steelers stuff on Friday
Uh-huh,
because that's it's game week. I'm not around Clemson people.
What did you just
that
say?
day. But I'm not covering Clemson at that point. I'm like walking around town.
Man, you should
So,
always be representing.
And going to the Steelers Hall of Fame. or
And then
whatever
going to
it's
the
called.
Steelers, Hall of Honors. Yeah, exactly. So looking forward to that. Brand new.
They got Hall of Famers up there?
Wow. Anyway, Brandon, if you're going to the trip though, go check it out because you
Pull my
get a
credentials.
tour of the facilities, you get a tour of their Hall of Honors, and you get to take pictures with the 6 Super Bowl trophies.
Man.
Which there's only one other team you can take pictures with 6 Super Bowl trophies. Vince Lombardi.
The good news, folks, we're driving separately. So Will can go do his Steeler Fest,
And I am.
and I cannot have to do that.
I am. So
Save-
check out the Steelers shop too.
Save some hours in my life.
Go to the pro shop if you're a Steelers
All right, we're going to get into more of that in our prediction video when we actually talk about going to Pittsburgh. But anyways, thank you guys for joining us. We'll make sure JP's here every week so we can continue the win streak.
Yep.
Stay tuned to Clemson Insider for the most complete coverage of Clemson football, Clemson recruiting, Clemson athletics.